What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Producing in a Pandemic, where we talk about tools and resources for artists and creatives. I'm your host, William Thompson, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about setting up a home studio. I think it is very, very, very important for you to have some type of studio set up. Now, obviously, studios aren't meant for every type of musician, but if you are someone that is looking to get into the recording arts in any way, shape, or form, it is imperative. So if you are a musician that is looking to work with a recording artist, you need to have some kind of studio. If you are an aspiring recording artist as a lead vocalist, lead singer, you need to have some type of home studio setup. If you are looking to be a supporting vocalist, you need to have some type of home studio setup. And of course, it's a given, but if you are looking to actually be a producer, a mixing engineer, mastering engineer, if you aspire to really work hands-on in recording technology, it is imperative that you have some type of home studio setup. So we're going to talk today about some of the tools that are needed in an essential studio. And I'm going to be talking about it primarily from the standpoint and from the viewpoint of a musician and or a singer. That's what I am, and that is really where we're going to be going with this. If you are looking to do more heavy-duty production and engineering, then you're going to need to go a little more in-depth in terms of having a studio and in terms of having certain types of resources and tools that are available and stuff like that. Really, if you're really doing that, you want to try to, get involved and take some sort of class to get that information. So, whether that is going to some place established like Berklee, College of Music, Full Sail University, doing an internship at a local studio, or even, just studying and finding a mentor who is, a talented producer. It's great to, find them as well and kind of get some more insight in terms of what they're utilizing. But for the purpose of today's video, we're going to be talking about a simple home and mobile setup for musicians and singers. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So one of the first things that you will need if you are looking to do recording at home, if you fall into the categories that I mentioned as, someone who is aspiring to work in either recording technology or in the recording music industry as a musician, a singer, a lead singer, or background singer, I think it's very important for you to have a studio. And one of the first things that you will need to have is a DAW. You'll need to have some type of DAW that you are going to be working in. Last week in our episode, we talked about some free DAWs, and I strongly recommend starting with those so that you can kind of get your feet wet when it comes to understanding the recording interface. It's basically the same through most programs. There are some standard things that you're going to see throughout most programs. There are some other things in terms of different types of plugins, effects, or functions that may be different between different DAWs. But the overall functionality and setup is generally the same. And if you can understand, on the most basic of levels, GarageBand, then you can understand Cakewalk. If you can understand Cakewalk, you can understand Soundtrap. If you can understand Soundtrap, you can understand BandLab or Pro Tools or Reason or FL Studios or whatever DAW it is that you want to use. So I strongly recommend that if you're just looking to get into recording at first, to go ahead and start with one of those DAWs. That's the first thing that you'll need to have. You'll need to have a DAW, and of course, you'll need to have a device that you can use that DAW on. So I strongly recommend getting a Mac computer. Mac computers are great for production. PCs are okay as well. Windows computer, that is fine as well. I'm biased. I'm not even going to front. Team Apple all day. And even the reason I have an iPhone was particularly so I could get GarageBand and utilize that. One of the reasons I do like Apple is because of the ease when it comes to transferring information. So I can easily send information or have things connected, between my iPad and my MacBook and my iPhone. So all of those devices are connected, and I can easily transfer files, things like that, share information through AirDrop or other resources and tools. So that's just my personal recommendation, but it's important that you do the research and figure out what works best for you. If a Windows computer works best for you, then just keep in mind that that limits some of your options. That means that you might want to look at, instead of starting with GarageBand, you might want to start out with Cakewalk or BandLab or something like that if you're looking at a free option. And of course, there are other options in terms of paid DAWs that you can use as well. So like I mentioned, there's Mixcraft, there's Pro Tools, there is Reason, FL Studios, Ableton Live. So there are a lot of different options out there that are available for you. And it's a matter of just figuring out what is the best one based on your particular needs and what goals you're trying to accomplish. If you're just trying to get into recording for the first time, I recommend looking at these free ones, and we're going to kind of use that as kind of the basis for the rest of our conversation moving forward. You need to have a DAW. You need to have a device for that DAW. The second thing that you will need is you will need to have some sort of recording interface, basically that's the best way to describe it. Some sort of recording interface. And you have two different things that you can use. If you are recording audio, and that means that you are actually, connecting a microphone to something and you are capturing that actual sound. If you are recording audio, then you want to have a microphone and what is called an audio interface. This is an example of one I have here in my hand. This one is by Focusrite, and it's a very popular one. A lot of people first use it when you are getting one or getting started with recording. So I strongly recommend looking at that. There are other options as well. There's some by PreSonus and Behringer and other brands as well. So depending on, how many outputs or inputs you need, if you're, say, for example, if you're a drummer and you need 8 mics to capture your drum set, then you might want to go with, one interface that has that many inputs. And keeping all that in mind, if you're just a singer, if you're someone who's just, you're one person singing into a microphone, or maybe it's you and a guitar, you might want to have something with 2 inputs. And that way you can capture your vocals and your guitar at the same time, and you can move forward with that. But it all depends on what you need. And you can select the best appropriate interface for that. The other kind of interface that you would want is a MIDI interface. So a MIDI interface or a MIDI cable is something that connects to what's called a MIDI controller. And there are various types of MIDI controllers. A lot of times when you hear someone say MIDI controller, what comes to mind is a MIDI keyboard. So a MIDI keyboard is set up like a piano keyboard. It is structured in that way, formatted in that way. But there are other types of controllers as well. If you have an electronic drum set, those can be used as MIDI controllers. If you have one of those digital pads, those can be used as MIDI controllers as well. So there are various types of controllers out there, and what those basically do is they control what is called MIDI. MIDI is the computer language for notes in a DAW. So if you press the C, press C4 on a keyboard, it'll trigger as C4 in the DAW. And whatever sound you have loaded in that DAW, it'll play that sound. So if you have a Steinway grand piano, you press C4, it'll trigger a C4 as it sounds on a Steinway grand piano. And same if you have, maybe an organ or an electric guitar or a harp or a violin or trumpet or a saxophone, whatever instrument you have loaded in there, the MIDI note is basically the computer translation of that note, the length, the velocity in terms of the strength and the volume of it. That is all determined by the MIDI controller, and you can utilize that. Some DAWs allow you to use your computer keyboard as well. If you're using GarageBand, there's the touch screen that's available on iPads and on iPhones, so that's available for you as well. If you need to utilize the MIDI functionality, but you don't have a MIDI keyboard or a MIDI controller that you can utilize. So that's another thing that you'll need. You'll need some sort of interface when it comes to recording, either audio for capturing something with a microphone, or you'll need to have a MIDI interface to connect your MIDI controller to your computer or your device. The next thing that you'll need, and this is more geared towards singers. If you are a singer, whether you're a lead singer or background singer, you'll need to have some type of microphone. And what I strongly recommend, if you can afford it, is to get what's called a condenser microphone. A condenser microphone is what a lot of people refer to as a studio mic. But the reason it's called a condenser microphone is because it's a lot more sensitive. It has a type of pickup pattern which is designed to pick up a lot more noise. So it can pick up some of the subtleties in your voice. It can pick up some of the small nuances that, a regular handheld dynamic microphone might not be able to pick up. Dynamic microphones typically are designed to pick up what's directly in front of it. This right here is an example of a dynamic microphone. I have another microphone here. This is the Shure SM7B. The Shure SM58. SM7B is another dynamic mic, but the Shure SM58 is a very popular handheld microphone. It's one of the most popular microphones in the world, and a lot of people utilize it when it comes to doing things like overdubs and live recordings if they need wired mics. It's a very standard in the industry, but you want to make sure that you have something that's going to pick up the small subtleties in your voice, especially if you are doing work for a client. If you are looking to do work, looking to offer your voice and lend your talents to someone's project, you want to make sure that you can give them the cleanest sound possible as well as the fullest sound possible. And the condenser mic is great for that. Now, I will say condenser mics also require some type of acoustic treatment. And that is something that you'll hear talked about a lot in terms of, is the room properly treated? Is the room properly treated? Most people, if you have a home studio, your room is not properly treated. Some people will take the time to put foam on their walls and things like that to keep sound from bouncing around. But basically, when you are recording vocals, you want to have as dead a space as possible. And I say that in this way. If you go into a stairwell, a lot of people like to make stairwell singing videos, and they sound really great because you have this reverb and echo and stuff like that you find. And that sounds great for the video, but if I was to record vocals in there, what would happen is that my voice would keep reflecting off the walls and back into the microphone. So that would create a really, really bad sound. So you want to create some type of isolation for your vocal. You want to create some type of isolation for your microphone. And there are several things that you can use to get that done. I utilize what's called a vocal shield or a reflection filter. And basically what that does is it goes behind the microphone to keep sound from bouncing into it. And sometimes what I'll do is I may also, cover it with a blanket or something like that to keep other sounds from coming in. And I got that idea actually from watching Jonathan McReynolds. I saw a video, Jonathan McReynolds and Mally Music were in a hotel. and they were recording vocals for their album that they did together. They did a feature. I think this is before they started doing their tour together, but they did a song together recently where Mally was featured on it, and Mally recorded those vocals in a hotel. And if you do the research, you'll actually find that some of your favorite songs, not just gospel, but secular as well, hip hop, R&B, other genres, you'll see that some of your favorite songs were recorded on the road. While people are touring, they still are trying to get albums out, by these deadlines that the record labels have put on them. And what they'll do is, while they're on tour, if they get a break, they will go to the hotel and they will sit with their producer and they will record the vocals in the hotel room. And these are still clean. These are still isolated vocals. They're what we call dry vocals. Dry means that there are no effects on it, no reverb, no echo, nothing like that. You just have the isolated vocal by itself. It hasn't been processed in any way, shape, or form. And that's the best type of vocal to have, because those vocals can be manipulated to be anything you want. So if you want to add big reverb to them to make it sound like you're in that stairwell, you can do that. If you want to add echoes and delays, you can do that. If you want to change the EQ to put filters on it, if you want to auto tune it, whatever it may be, you can easily do that when you have a good, clean vocal recording. So as I've said before, and I'm going to say it again, you don't have to have, access to a professional studio to get professional vocals. Some of your favorite songs were recorded in a hotel room. So it's just a matter of knowing what you need to do in order to get that clean vocal. So I utilize that technique when I'm here. I have my microphone right behind me. So I literally will just stand up and I will sing and I will do my thing and I'll get clean vocals from there. And, I'm able to send those vocals out either to a mixing engineer or I can try to mix them myself. Or if I'm working with another artist doing a feature or doing background vocals, I can send those to that artist very easily, and they have access to that so that they can move forward. So that's very important to have, that isolation. A reflection filter, a vocal shield is one thing that you can use. There's another item that I personally have been looking to try. I have not yet gotten it. It is called the Eyeball by Chaotica. So I strongly, recommend looking at that. It's got some pretty good reviews. It basically does the job of creating an isolation booth by having the acoustic treatment in this thing that looks like an eyeball. Literally has like the iris on it and everything and the pupil. So you put it on top of your microphone and it has a pop filter on there. What a pop filter does is it prevents things like p, 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 and s, s, and t, t. It makes those less harsh when those are coming through. And you want to have those, especially when you are doing vocal recording for a project like that. When you want to have clean vocals, you want to try and have those consonant sounds be less harsh if possible. And, like I said, there are things that the mixing engineers can do, but the big thing is that they can only work with what you give them. So you want to give them the best possible recording if you need to do that. So that is another option that you can do. You can use a vocal shield, or you can use something like Chaotica. There are other options. Those are more expensive. There's a company called Whisper Room where they basically have a portable vocal booth. You can get those in various sizes in order to get sound isolation and things like that. So you can do whatever you feel that you need in order to get the isolation that you need based on where you are. If you're in an apartment, maybe you want something with a little more isolation. Maybe you want to have that isolation booth so that not only is sound not coming in, but sound also isn't traveling out into into like, your neighbors or anything like that. If you're in a larger residential area and you have more space, then maybe it's okay, and maybe you just need the eyeball, or maybe you just need the vocal shield, because it's not necessarily going to disturb your neighbors because they're not next door, they're not above you, they're not below you. Figure out what's best based on the situation that you're in. So that's basically what you're going to need. Like I mentioned, the eyeball comes with that pop filter. If you choose not to go with the eyeball, then you'll want to get your own pop filter. And I strongly recommend getting the metallic ones but there are also mesh pop filters that you can use as well, that are still effective and help to lower the harshness or lessen the harshness of some of those consonant sounds. So as a reminder, as a recap, vocalists, singers, what you want to have for your vocal needs is a microphone, preferably a condenser mic, a vocal shield, or the eyeball, some type of vocal isolation, and then you'll want to have a pop filter. Those are the three things that you will need in order to record and connect into your audio interface and get the best clean recording possible. Now, for musicians, let's talk about it, because there are a lot of different things that you may need depending on what you play. So you have to first figure out, is my instrument digital or is it analog or acoustic? All right, think about that first and foremost. So if you are playing something that is more of an analog or acoustic instrument, then that means that you may need to plug that instrument in through an audio interface. If you're playing an electric guitar, then you have the electric guitar itself, and you have the pickup patterns and all the different knobs that may change and affect the guitar, but then you also have a pedal board with different effects that you can utilize. So what you want to do is make sure that you can connect that pedal board to an audio interface, and that audio interface can easily connect and process all the information, process that audio as you are intending to play it. Now, if you don't have that pedal board, if you are someone who's just getting started, maybe you don't have an amp that you can connect to a mic or something like that, what you can also do is plug your guitar directly into an audio interface, and you can utilize effects that are found in your DAWs. So I know in Logic and GarageBand that there is a virtual pedal board that you can utilize, and you can have that set up so that as you are recording, you can turn on different effects, or you can even go back in post, and after you've recorded your raw, unedited electric guitar line, you can then go back and you can add effects and trigger them at certain times in order to make sure that it gets the sound that you want to have for that particular song, or whatever project it is that you're working on. So that's just one example for like guitar players. Again, I mentioned drummers. If you are a drummer, or if you are someone who plays an instrument that requires multiple microphones, you want to make sure that you have an interface that has the appropriate number of inputs, so that all of your mics can go in there and they can easily be processed either as individual tracks or as one stereo track. I know sometimes what some drummers will do is, instead of getting an audio interface with multiple inputs, what they'll do is they'll get a small mixer, and they'll maybe get like a mixer with 16 channels or something like that. They'll plug their microphones into that mixer, mix it according to the levels that they want, and then have that mixer go out to the audio interface, so that the audio interface is getting basically the stereo audio that you've already mixed. Now, I will say the danger to that is that if you are working with an artist that needs the individual files for mixing, then that takes you out of business, that puts you out of the running. You can't really be helpful and supportive because all you can give them is a stereo file. But I do think that it's great to be able to have the option to work in stereo as well as work with individual tracks or what we call stems. So those are just some examples for those analog instruments, those acoustic instruments that need to be mic'd. If you are a musician that is, hey, maybe I want to experiment with sounds and, I don't have, the Yamaha Montage. I don't have the latest Nord. I don't have, a Korg Kronos or the Roland Phantom. I don't have, these high-end keyboards with all these sounds that are, thousands of dollars. If you have a few $100s, you can get a MIDI controller. And there are various ones that you can get. Some, and I'll say this, a lot of keyboards nowadays, even ones that aren't marketed as MIDI controllers, have MIDI capabilities. So I bought a keyboard once. It was the Yamaha P115. I don't think it's still on sale, but it's a digital piano from Yamaha. It has a couple of piano sounds. It has a couple of electric pianos, a couple of organs, strings, things like that. Maybe 10 sounds most. It's not a whole lot. It's great if I need to, go somewhere real quick and just have a piano sound on hand and they don't have, amps because it has built-in speakers, things like that. It's great to be able to utilize that. But it also has MIDI capabilities. So what I can do is I can plug that keyboard up to my computer utilizing the Midi interface or Midi cable, and I'm able to use it to trigger the sounds. That was just a few $100s. This is maybe $400 or $500. A lot cheaper than a $4,000 Nord. A lot cheaper than a $2,000 or $3,000, Yamaha Montage or Yamaha MX. So it's a lot of money that you're saving, just by having that MIDI capability. And even if you get a program like Logic is $200. That's still $400 plus $200, $600. I'm still paying less than half of what I would pay to utilize some of these other programs. And if you're using something like GarageBand, then that's free. You're saving even more money. So definitely consider, what your options are. Consider what your budget is. Obviously, if you can afford, the Yamaha Montage, the Nord, the Kronos, the Phantom, you're more than welcome to get those. Nobody is saying they're not good boards, but it's great to be able to have the option to do one or the other. And that is what I would consider, consider and look at those DAWs, look at the sounds, look at what's available, see if there are sounds that are not maybe on your keyboard. Some of the sounds that are on here have been sampled from your favorite keyboard. Some of them have been adapted from your favorite keyboards. So, keep all that in mind and make sure that you're using that in order to have, the best sound possible. So just as a reminder for singers, you want to have the mic, the pop filter, the isolation equipment. For musicians, you want to have either a MIDI interface or audio interface and making sure that it has the appropriate amount of channels and inputs for whatever your device is. So if it's a keyboard, you want to have 2 inputs so that you can have that stereo sound. If it's a guitar, maybe it's just the one, maybe it's 2, so you can have a stereo sound as well. For drummers or percussionists, you're definitely going to want to have at least 6 to 8 inputs in your interface, when you're recording. So just, keeping all of those things in mind. Again, I think it's so important in today's day and age to have some kind of home studio setup. This does not mean that you're a producer. It doesn't mean that you are the mixing engineer or that you're the mastering engineer. And it's okay to outsource those services. But One of the purposes of this podcast is to empower creatives. I want you to feel empowered that you don't have to outsource. You don't have to go to a studio, and to give yourself the option to say, hey, maybe for this project, I do want to go to a studio. That's fine, but it's because you're making the choice. It's not because you feel forced. It's because you are making the conscious decision to invest in yourself in that way, to have the ear of a mixing engineer or an audio engineer that can, help facilitate that process. And of course, if you want to have other people in the room with you, you can easily do that. It's a lot easier to do in a studio environment than it is to do at home, especially if you're short on space, things like that, short on time, whatever it may be. It can be a little easier to have people do that in a studio for a set amount of time. And some people, need that time to focus. But I want to encourage you that you don't have to go to a studio. Again, you don't have to go to a studio. I'm not saying don't go to one. I've been to studios myself. I had a great time. I recorded my first single. I recorded part of it at a studio, but I also recorded the background vocals here in my basement. I also recorded some at the church that I was attending. So being able to blend the two experiences, that helped me to still be productive, still have a good positive experience, still have a great sound from that single, but at the same time, I was able to save some money and save myself a bit of a headache too. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Producing in a Pandemic. If you enjoyed today's episode, our topic, our conversation, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. I look forward to talking with you all again real soon. Until next time, keep creating. Bye.